I think my mother is lying about who my father is again. I have a very complicated and messy relationship with my mother. Growing up, I believed my father was a military man from America named Alex. We had visited him when I was a toddler and had planned to move to the US to live with him. Then, according to my mother, she and him had a fight and he refused to speak to me or her again. I went on to believe that he had abandoned me and that my mother had done everything she could to get us into contact again. She spent the next 14 years saying how he had refused to sign my birth certificate, that he had been emailed our location and how to contact us every time we moved, and that she didn't understand why he didn't want me anymore. She had also told me he had no social media and that she had tried looking but found nothing. As the title suggests, she had lied about everything. When I was around 15 or 16, I had decided to look for him myself, as I had always felt something was off and wanted to know what happened. It took less than 5 minutes to find him on Facebook. I was shocked, and when I saw him with his children at Disney World, I was devastated. Alex looked so normal and happy, and I couldn't wrap my head around why he could be so seemingly good to his other children and not me. So I decided I wasn't going to message him before trying one more time to hear it from my mother. I thought that maybe she was just lying to protect me, and that maybe she was trying not to hurt me, and Alex was not the man I thought he was. After having a very intense yelling match, she finally tells me the truth: Alex isn't my father. She then goes on to explain that I was conceived on a one-night stand, and that she didn't know anything but his first name. I was then sat down by her and her best friend and basically told to get over it, as she was just trying to protect me and give me a nicer version of my father. I was also told not to tell my aunt, as my mother was embarrassed. For the next few years I wasn't allowed to talk about it. If I did, my mother would become defensive and we would fight until I decided to drop it. I felt so alone and isolated. I was also made to feel guilty about how I found out and that I had ruined her plan of sitting me down and explaining it all to me. It took a toll on my mental health tremendously, and as much as I wanted to believe her, I just couldn't. But I also had nowhere else to live and knew that it was just better to keep the peace and try to drop it. I tried, I really did. But then I downloaded TikTok and found out about home DNA tests. Last year I had seen a TikTok of a girl from my country finding her brother from doing a DNA test, and I decided to do one. But due to life getting in the way, I was only able to do it this year. To my surprise, my mother was very encouraging and had even offered to pay for it as my birthday present. I couldn't believe it. It was like a switch had been flipped, and then suddenly I am able to talk about it and ask questions. She told me everything, though little, she knew about him, and seemed to be excited about me finding him. I took her up on her offer and 2 weeks later spat into a tube and sent it off. I then spent 2 months daily checking for updates, looking up other people's stories and imagining how we would officially meet. It's unrealistic, I know, but I honestly wanted to believe that all the emotional damage would be fixed just by meeting him, and that I would be able to move on with my life as an adult with 2 parents. It was a euphoric feeling seeing that little tracker move up little by little each week until finally the matches were in. All my matches were of second cousins, and all their information was private, so I couldn't do anything besides message them and pray that they respond. Luckily, the people I have spoken to thus far have been very friendly but also very confused. None of them have any idea what I'm talking about and have no link to a man named Max. I want to assume that it's just because it's a big family, or maybe he had lied about his name to her, but considering how my mother is acting now, I'm not sure. It's like we're back to square one. She has gone from being very open and compassionate to defensive and annoyed. Every time I tell her one of my cousins have messaged me back, she starts to get nervous and snippy. She's also changing her story in small ways that feel suspicious. For example, when asked about his name, she used to be very adamant that it was Max and that she knew he wasn't lying, as his friend was dating hers and that they also called him Max. Now she says that she isn't sure and that no one else called him Max near her and that it's possible he lied. She also keeps changing from I could pick him out of a lineup if I saw him to no, I don't remember what he looks like. It happened so long ago I honestly don't know how to feel. I want to believe her but I just can't. There's something wrong and I know she's keeping something from me. I think she believed that maybe I wouldn't connect with anyone, but I don't know. I honestly don't know how I would be able to forgive her and know that it would destroy what's left of our relationship if she's lying. I love her, but cannot understand how she believed making me believe my father had chosen to abandon me was a better reality than the truth. Coming soon. I think my mother is lying about who my father is again. I now know who my father is, and no, my mother was not the one lying. My conception was consensual. Finding my dad was not worth potentially hurting my mother if it hadn't been. However, after a few days of not talking about it, my mother was the one to mention it and asked me if I was able to find any other matches. She seemed to be in a better mood and was more open. She confided in me about her feelings, and I did the same. We talked and I felt comfortable to continue my search. While the truth was not at all what I think either of us wanted, I am happy to report that our relationship is in a good space and that we both have been able to peacefully resolve this issue. The past couple of days have been an emotional whirlwind, and so breaking this all down is a little hard, but I will try my best. Coincidentally, right around the time I first did the original test, I had managed to get a job after looking for a good 3 years. So, the idea of paying another $200 on a test was out of the question for me. I just wanted to buckle down and pay off my debt and save. However, a few people informed me that I could download my DNA data and upload it for free on MyHeritage instead of having to buy their test and doing the whole process again. So, I did. As I mentioned before, I had just started working again, and so I just tried to forget about it. I also just believed that at most, it would just give me another third cousin who also did not know what I was talking about. I now believe I was just trying to distance myself from the situation as much as I could emotionally so that when I was given nothing, I wouldn't be as disappointed as I was the first time. After a few days, I checked my email and was told that my results were ready. It was pretty late at night, but I thought F it, and checked them out. At first it seemed to be pretty much the same, saw a few familiar names, and my ethnicity was pretty much the exact same too. However, there was a new highest match. A nephew named Jake with a 22.2% DNA match. I really cannot express the feeling that flowed through me when I saw that match, but it honestly sent chills down my spine when I saw his picture. I was already in tears before I had even clicked on his profile. I went onto his profile and was confused on how he could have been my nephew but was a good 10 years older than me. It just didn't make sense, and his family tree was private. Luckily, he used the same profile picture on both MyHeritage and Facebook, so I messaged both. I explained my situation and also clarified that he did not have to message back if he was uncomfortable. I have always tried to be conscious of the other people I was involving into this, and that I wasn't trying to gain anything other than the truth. I say this because I believe that despite my intentions, I will always feel guilty about messaging Jake, and that I know that I have hurt him. Anyway, a good hour or two later Jake replied. He was very sweet and explained that his father had actually been adopted and that I most likely came from his side because of this. He also revealed to me that, coincidentally, his father's name was also Max. We went back and forth a bit, asking each other questions when the tone suddenly seemed to shift after I mentioned Max's friend that was dating my mother's friend. Our messages turned from haha, what a weird coincidence to holy poop, it's my effing dad. Our conversation ended pretty quickly after that, with him telling me that his dad had actually passed away a few years ago and that there was pretty much nothing else to say. I was also still a bit put off about the whole nephew thing, but found out that it may have been because I didn't put my birth date or gender into my profile. So after doing that, I checked again and the match had updated from nephew to half-brother, which just confirmed what we already knew to be true. After our conversation I did a bit of looking around his Facebook and found out that I actually had a couple of siblings. My sister looks exactly like me, to the point that it scared me, and that I am the youngest. I also found out that both Max and his friend were in fact married at the time I was conceived, which means they were both actively cheating together on their wives with other women. Because of this, I have no doubt that this was not the first time they cheated, and that it was just the first time he had been caught to a degree. So yeah, my biological dad is a cheating a-hole and I am disgusted. He has not only hurt his wife and children, but has also involved my mother and me into his deceit. Had I had known the way this would have turned out, I would have never taken a test. I will always feel guilty for hurting his family, and even though I know it isn't my fault, and that I wasn't the one cheating, I still am responsible for hurting them and their memory of their father. So overall I now know the truth.